My name's Will. I'm 33. I'm a lawyer, and in my family, I've always been the one people call when something needs to be fixed. Paperwork, leases, traffic tickets, a quick look at a contract, a phone call to someone who knows how this works. That someone was always me. I was the oldest son, the stable one, the one with a calendar full of hearings and client meetings and somehow still expected to solve everybody else's mess before dinner. I lived alone, worked long hours, wore suits more often than jeans, and paid my bills on time. That last part mattered more than it should have in my family, because the truth was simple. My younger brother Derek liked the life of a responsible man a lot more than he liked being one. Derek was 29, charming when he needed to be, loud when he wanted attention, lazy in ways that somehow always got renamed as free-spirited by my mother. He jumped from job to job, always with a reason it wasn't the right fit. Somehow, he still had clean sneakers, a newer phone than mine, and an endless confidence that made no sense to anyone who had ever seen his bank account. He was also engaged. That part still makes me laugh now, but not because it was funny then. His fiancée, Kayla, thought he was building something. That was the phrase she used, building something, like he was some hustling entrepreneur instead of a guy living inside 3 different safety nets at once. Mine was one of them. I had co-signed the apartment because he swore it was temporary. I had helped with the down payment and monthly payments on the car because he said he needed reliable transportation to get serious. I had kept him on my phone plan for 2 years because, according to my mother, a phone is how people find work, Will. Everything was always about potential with Derek, never results. The actual trigger came on a Wednesday night, not in private, not in a quiet family call, but on my phone while I was still sitting at my desk finishing edits on a settlement agreement. I opened Instagram because I wanted 10 brainless seconds before going home. And there he was, my brother, leaning back on the couch in the apartment I had co-signed for, filming one of those smug little vertical videos people make when they think they're giving wisdom instead of showing off. He lifted his drink, looked straight into the camera and said, "Real men provide for their family. Boys make excuses." Then he laughed. In the background, I could see the same kitchen island I had helped move in, the same gray sofa I'd helped pay for after he and Kayla came up short. His car keys were on the counter too. The car I had made payments on when his account overdrafted 3 months in a row. The caption said, "If you're a man, your family should never struggle because of you." The comments were worse. One of his friends wrote, "Say it louder." Another said, "Too many selfish dudes out here." Then my mother commented with a heart and, "So proud of the man you've become." I just stared at it. I could feel that weird cold heat in my chest. Not explosive anger. Something cleaner than that. Something sharper. Then my phone buzzed again. Family group chat. My dad had sent the video in there too. Derek replied, "Some people in the family should watch this and learn." I knew exactly who that was meant for. Before I could even decide whether to respond, my mother called. I answered on the second ring. She didn't say hello, she said. "Maybe if you didn't act like helping your own brother was charity, he wouldn't have to make a point publicly." I actually pulled the phone away from my ear and looked at it. "Are you serious?" I asked. "He's embarrassed," she snapped. Do you know what it does to a man when his own brother makes him feel small? That almost made me laugh. "Derek makes himself feel small," I said. "No," she said, voice getting tighter. "You do. You always have. Ever since law school. Ever since you started acting like you were better than everyone." There it was. Not gratitude, not even denial, just resentment. Derek had always hated that I got out, that I built something, that people listened when I spoke because I knew what I was talking about. He couldn't stand being the one who needed help, so he rewrote the story until I was the arrogant one and he was the wounded victim. And he was good at it, good enough that my parents had been swallowing that version for years. That night, I didn't comment right away. I watched the video one more time. I looked at the apartment, the car keys, the expensive phone in his hand. Then I hit like. I commented one word, facts. And for the first time in my life, I think my brother mistook calm for surrender. He shouldn't have, because that night wasn't the night I started ruining his life. It was the night I stopped protecting it. To understand why that video hit me the way it did, you need to understand how long I had been carrying Derek. Not helping him. Carrying him. There's a difference. When I was 24, I was fresh out of law school, buried in student loans, working brutal hours as a junior associate, and eating takeout over my laptop more nights than I want to remember. Derek was still being figured out by my parents, which is a phrase they used when they wanted to avoid saying he was doing nothing. He'd quit community college, then a sales job, then digital marketing, then a friend's landscaping company. Every time there was a speech. It wasn't the right environment. The manager was threatened by him. He's got bigger ideas. My mother delivered those lines like press statements. Meanwhile, I was wiring money to cover his missed insurance payment because my dad said if his car gets repossessed, how's he supposed to turn it around? That's how it started. One emergency, then another, then another. At first it was small, a utility bill, a traffic fine, a month of insurance. Then it got bigger. When Derek got approved for almost nothing and rejected everywhere else, my parents came to me with the apartment. Mom sat at my kitchen table twisting her hands like she was asking me to donate an organ. He and Kayla just need one chance, she said. Dad added, you know how these landlords are. They see one rough year and that's it. One rough year? I asked. He's had 6 rough years. Dad stared at me like I was the problem. Must everything sound like a closing argument with you? I remember that because it was such a ridiculous thing to say. I said no the first time. Then my mother cried. Actually cried. Not because Derek was struggling, because according to her, I was making the family feel divided. So I co-signed. The next year came the car. He needed a better image for interviews, according to him. I said, then he can save for one. My mother said, easy for you to say from your office. As if I had been born in a suit, as if I hadn't spent years clawing my way into that office. Derek called me that night. Bro, you know I'm good for it. You are literally not good for it, I said. He laughed like I was being cute. Why are you always like this? Like what? Like I'm some random loser asking you for a handout. I was quiet for a second. Then I said, because that's what's happening. He hung up on me. Mom called 10 minutes later. That was the family rhythm, Derek asked. I refused. Mom translated my refusal into cruelty. Dad backed her up by saying I needed to be less rigid. Then eventually I gave in because I was tired. That last part is the thing people don't talk about enough. Toxic families don't always break you with one giant betrayal. Sometimes they just wear you down with repetition. The car ended up partially in my hands too. Not in title, but in practice. When he missed payments, the calls started coming to me because I was the person everyone knew would pick up and do something. Then, the phone plan. That one was almost stupid in how casual it happened. He was about to get his line shut off. My mom called while I was in court waiting for a hearing to start. Can you just add him to yours for a month or two? That month or two became 2 years. When I brought it up later, she'd say things like, why are you counting? He's your brother. Because I was the only one counting. I counted every auto draft, every late fee, every promise, every I'll get you next month. I counted because somebody had to. The humiliation didn't come from the money alone. It came from how Derek used my help and then rewrote it as weakness. He started telling people I was obsessive about money, that I held things over his head, that I only helped so I could feel superior. He said it at barbecues. He said it in group chats. Once, at my parents' house, he said it right in front of me while cutting into steak my father had paid for. Will's favorite hobby is acting like Bank of America with feelings. Everybody laughed, even my mom. I looked at her and she shrugged. Oh, don't be so sensitive. He's joking. That was one of her favorite lines. He's joking. He didn't mean it. That's just how he is. What she never said was, and this is what we allow him to do to you. The worst part was how he kept setting my parents against me. If I said no to something, he'd get to them first. He'd tell them I was cold, that I thought I was too good for the family, that I looked down on him because he didn't become a lawyer. That one was the real wound underneath everything. Derek was jealous, not quietly, not deep down, openly, constantly. When I passed the bar, he got drunk at dinner and said, "Congrats on learning how to bill people by the hour." When I moved into my first decent apartment, he told my parents I only got it because law is just rich people protecting rich people. When I bought my condo, he told my mother I was showing off by inviting them over. I wasn't. It was a two-bedroom place with old floors and a view of a parking lot. But to Derek, anything I built for myself felt like an insult to him. So he started doing little things, poison drip things, telling my parents I never called unless I needed praise, claiming I corrected him to make him feel stupid, saying I talked to Kayla like she was beneath them both when all I had ever done was ask practical questions no one else wanted to ask. Are you on the lease too? Whose name is on the title? How behind are the payments exactly? Those questions made me the villain because facts were never welcome in my family when feelings could be weaponized instead. Things got uglier after his engagement. Suddenly, Derek started performing adulthood instead of building it, posting motivational quotes, talking about legacy, calling himself a provider while borrowing from everybody around him. And because I'm a lawyer, because I'm organized, because I keep copies of things, my parents treated me like a safe deposit box with a pulse. Dad once said, "You'll always land on your feet." What he meant was, so we can keep letting Derek fall on you. Then came the twist that should have ended it months earlier. I found out Derek had been using my name in conversations with people to make himself sound stable. Yeah, my brother's involved. He helped structure things. He's basically advising me. No, I wasn't. Not on anything. I only learned that because an acquaintance of mine mentioned Derek was working on some deal and casually said, "Good thing he has you handling the legal side." I felt my stomach drop. That night I called Derek. "What exactly have you been telling people?" He sighed hard like I was exhausting him. "Relax. I'm just saying my brother's a lawyer so people know I'm serious. You are using my name. It's called networking. It's called lying." Then he did what he always did when cornered. He got mean. "You know what your problem is? You can't stand seeing me build anything." I almost laughed because he said it while driving a car I'd helped keep from repossession. A week later, my mother called to tell me I owed him an apology. An apology for attacking his confidence. That was when I started pulling records together, quietly, not to act yet, just because some part of me knew I'd need the full picture one day. Lease papers, payment confirmations, carrier statements, messages, I had all of it. Then Derek escalated from resentment to humiliation. At Sunday dinner in front of our parents and Kayla, he raised his glass and said, "Here's to Will." Family's favorite emergency contact. Everybody laughed again. Then he added, looking right at me, "Too bad he's never been anyone's first call for love." That one landed hard because it wasn't about money. It was personal and nasty and designed to sting in a room where he knew I wouldn't make a scene. Kayla went, "Derek," but she was smiling when she said it. My mother actually told me, "Don't start." I hadn't said a word. That was the system. He provoked. They pre-blamed me, and somehow I was always the threat. By the time he posted that "Real Men Provide" video, the truth was uglier than any outsider would guess. Derek didn't just take my money. He took my labor, my credibility, my patience, and then used all of it to make me look small inside my own family. And because he was jealous, because he needed me beneath him emotionally, if not financially, he kept finding ways to turn my parents against me. He'd tell them I thought they were failures too, that I mocked Dad's business struggles, that I made Mom feel uneducated. None of that was true. But truth was never really the point in my family. Control was. And Derek had one talent nobody wanted to admit. He could turn his shame into a story where somebody else looked cruel. So when that video went up, and my parents acted like he was some self-made provider speaking truth to a selfish older brother, I finally saw it clearly. He didn't want help. He wanted credit. He wanted the image of a man standing on his own, while still using my back as the floor. And what happened next only confirmed it, because less than 20 minutes after he posted that video, he texted me privately. Just one message. "Delete your comment. Mom's upset. Not sorry. Not thank you." Not this got out of hand. "Delete your comment. Mom's upset." I stared at that message for a long time. Then another came. "Also, Kayla says if you're going to be bitter, at least don't embarrass us online." Us. That word sat there on my screen while my bank app notifications, my carrier charges, and my saved lease copies sat in the same phone. And for the first time, instead of feeling guilt, I felt something close to peace. Because the pattern had finally run out of disguises. I wasn't helping family. I was financing my own disrespect. I didn't make the calls that night out of rage. That's the part people get wrong. Rage is messy. This was clean. First, I called the leasing office. I introduced myself, gave them the unit number, confirmed I was the co-signer, and asked a very simple question. What are my options for removing myself at the end of the current term if the primary tenants don't qualify on their own? The woman on the phone was calm, professional. She laid it out for me in plain language. Notice periods. Income verification. What would happen if they couldn't qualify without me? I thanked her, wrote everything down, and moved on. Then I called the finance company on the car. I had records of every payment I'd made to prevent delinquency. I asked what protections existed for a third party who had been covering the account informally, and whether missed payments were already on file. They were. Of course they were. Then I called the phone carrier. That one was easiest. The line was mine. The account was mine. The line could be removed, not immediately that second, but processed, one after another. No yelling, no threats. Just facts. By Thursday morning, Derek still had no idea what I'd started. What he did have was confidence. Too much of it. He posted again, this time a photo dump. Apartment mirror selfie. Car in the parking garage, Kayla kissing his cheek. Caption, built, not borrowed. I looked at that line and actually smiled. Built, not borrowed. I screenshotted it. Then my mother called. Again. This has gone far enough, she said. What has? Your attitude. I leaned back in my chair at the office and closed my eyes for a second. My attitude. Yes, Derek is trying to step up in life and you can't stand it. That's interesting, I said, because most people stepping up don't do it from assets somebody else is carrying. Silence. Then she hit me with the usual. You keep score with family. It's sick. No, I said. I keep records. That's different. She made this disgusted little noise. You sound exactly like a lawyer. I am exactly a lawyer. That shut her up for half a second. Then she said, lower now, your brother told us you've always resented him, that you hate that people actually like him. I laughed then. I couldn't help it. Mom, he tells you that because he can't stand that I have things he didn't earn. You are so arrogant. No, I'm accurate. That phone call was the real breaking point. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't anymore. By then, I had spent years trying to explain myself in language that would make them love me fairly. It never worked. Facts sounded cruel to people invested in fantasy, so I stopped translating. Friday was when it all hit at once. The leasing office sent formal notice requirements. The carrier processed the line removal. The finance company, after another conversation and documentation review, made it clear what would happen if the account continued the way it had been going. And Derek, because life has a mean sense of timing, chose Friday morning to call me yelling. What the hell did you do? I was in my kitchen making coffee. Good morning to you too. My phone says service suspended. Your line was removed from my account. You can't do that. I can. I did. He was breathing hard now. Kayla can't even call me. Then she can add you to hers. You petty. No, I cut in. Petty was posting a lecture about providing while standing inside my credit. He went quiet for 1 second, then louder. So this is because of a video? It's because of years. He started cursing. Then the next part came out in that wounded, furious tone I knew so well. You always do this. You wait. You act fake calm. You think because you know paperwork you can control people. There it was again. Jealousy wearing the mask of outrage. I'm not controlling you, I said. I'm stepping back. From my life? No. From financing it. He hung up. 10 minutes later, my dad called. What did you do to your brother's phone? I removed my financial support. Dad exhaled hard. You're blowing this up. No, I've been preventing it from blowing up for years. Then he said the dumbest thing anyone said that week. You made your point. Now fix it. Fix it. Like I was a mechanic for consequences. I'm not fixing anything, I said. And then, because I was done being talked over, I added, also, the apartment renewal issue is theirs to solve. Same with the car. He went very still. What renewal issue? So Derek hadn't told them. Interesting. By noon, Kayla was calling me crying. Actual crying. Not manipulative at first. Just panicked. Will, please tell me this isn't what I think it is. I stood by my office window and looked down at the street. It depends what you think it is. Derek said you're trying to make us homeless. No, I said. I stopped pretending his life was self-sustaining. She was silent. Then she said, quietly, he told me he handled the apartment himself. I almost asked if she was serious, but I stopped myself. Of course he had. Kayla, I said, how much do you actually know? By the end of that call, she knew more than Derek wanted. Not every detail, just enough. Enough to understand that the apartment had my signature attached to its stability. Enough to understand the car had only stayed current because I kept catching it when it slipped. Enough to understand his phone had been under my account for 2 years, she whispered. He told me you just liked helping because it made you feel important. I laughed once. No humor in it. Of course he did. That evening there was a family confrontation at my parents' house. Public enough to matter, small enough to feel intimate. Me, Derek, Mom, Dad, Kayla. And because my family loves a witness when they think I'm the villain, my Aunt Teresa happened to drop by and stayed. Derek came in hot. You humiliated me. I was seated already, hands folded, calm. No. I documented reality. Mom snapped. Will, stop talking like you're in court. I'd love to, I said. Then maybe everyone else can stop lying like they're under oath. That landed. Derek slammed his palm on the table. You think you're better than me because you make money. No, I said. I think I'm more responsible than you because I pay my own bills. He actually pointed at me like that was unfair. You turned Kayla against me. I answered questions. You turned Mom and Dad against me. That one made me stare at him because it was such a perfect confession of how his mind worked. As if our parents belonged to whoever controlled the story that day. No, I said. You spent years turning them against me. He laughed bitterly. Oh, here we go. St. Will. That was when I took out the folder. Printed statements, lease documents, payment confirmations, carrier records, dates, amounts. I slid them across the table one by one. I co-signed this. Silence. I covered these. Another page. This line was mine. Another. These were the late payments. Another. You posted built, not borrowed, while standing on top of all of this. Nobody said anything. Even my aunt shut up. Derek's face changed first. Not guilt. Not yet. Fear. Then anger rushed in to cover it. So what? You helped me. Family helps family. I nodded. Yes, and family also doesn't publicly mock the person keeping them afloat. Mom started crying. Dad looked stunned. Kayla looked sick. And Derek, because he was still Derek, even cornered, went for the insult. You're alone for a reason, you know that? Nobody can stand being around someone who keeps receipts on love. I looked him dead in the face and said, good. Then go be around people who pay their own way. That was the moment. The real moment. The one where I said no and meant it all the way through. No more apartment. No more car rescue. No more phone line. No more pretending my help was respect. And no more letting my brother turn my parents into a weapon against me just because he was jealous I had built the life he wanted to cosplay online. By Friday morning, his whole life was on 30-day notice. That isn't drama. That's administration. The apartment wasn't being renewed under the same easy assumptions anymore. They had to requalify. The phone was gone. The car situation was wobbling because once I stopped patching holes, the holes stayed visible. And the funniest part was how fast Real Men Provide turned into, can you just help one more time? The first few days after the confrontation were chaos. Mom called 6 times the next morning. I let the first 4 go to voicemail. The 5th one I answered. She was already crying. You've made your point. No, I said. I've made my boundary. Derek said he'll apologize. That doesn't restore my signature to places it doesn't belong. He's under pressure. He's been underwritten, not pressured. She got angry then because sadness hadn't worked. You enjoy this. That one I expected. It's what enablers say when consequences finally arrive and they need the person with boundaries to become the villain again. I don't enjoy it, I said. I just refuse to stop it. Dad tried a different angle that afternoon. He showed up at my office lobby without warning. Old move. Physical presence, stern face, make it feel like I'm still 16. We sat in the downstairs coffee area and he kept his voice low. You've embarrassed the family. I looked at him for a second. No. Derek did that when he built a fake image out of other people's support. He's your brother. Yes. And? Dad rubbed his forehead. You don't understand what happens when a man loses everything at once. That one almost got me, not because it was true, but because it was close enough to truth to sound wise. I said, then maybe he should have thought about that before mocking the person holding half of it together. Dad didn't have an answer to that, so he moved to guilt. You've always been harder than the rest of us. I said, no. I've just always been the only one expected to survive honesty. He left angry. Not shouting angry. Worse, quiet angry. The kind fathers do when they can't win and don't know how to respect the son in front of them. Meanwhile, the cracks spread through Derek's life fast. Kayla called me twice more. The second call was different from the first. Less crying. More flat. She asked, did he ever plan to tell me any of this? No, I said. She was quiet a long time. Then, he keeps saying once you calm down, everything goes back. That line told me everything. To Derek, my boundary was a mood, a tantrum, a dramatic phase, not a permanent structural change. I said, it doesn't go back, she whispered. I think he really believes it does. Of course he does. A week later, she moved some of her things out. I didn't know that from spying. My cousin told me. In my family, news travels faster once there's blood in the water. Then came the apology. Derek texted first. Can we talk man to man? I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. We met at a diner halfway between my office and his apartment. He looked bad. Not tragic, not ruined. Just stripped of swagger. Eyes tired. Hat pulled low. Phone screen cracked. He sat down and skipped hello. I know I took it too far. I waited. He swallowed. I was angry. I still waited. He looked away. I've been jealous of you for a long time. There it was. Not pretty, not noble, but real. He kept going. You make everything look easy. I said, it wasn't easy. I know that now. I didn't rescue him from the discomfort. He admitted he'd played my parents against me. Admitted he made comments on purpose because he hated how people respected me. Admitted the video was aimed at me because he wanted to knock me down in front of everyone for once. And for a second, sitting there with bad coffee between us, I thought maybe this was the first honest conversation of our adult lives. Then he ruined it. He leaned forward and said, almost impatient now, so I apologized. I just looked at him. He continued, can you put everything back? I actually blinked. What? The apartment, the car, the phone. Like, okay, I get it, I was wrong. I said sorry. Let's move on. There it was, the core of him. Not repentance. Transaction. He thought apology was a key that reopened access. I laughed then. Right in his face. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable and completely believable at the same time. You think saying sorry means I give you the apartment and the car and put you back on my plan? He got defensive instantly. Well, what was the point of me apologizing then? That sentence told me more than all the jealousy ever had. I leaned in and said, very calmly, the point was to take responsibility, not to invoice me for forgiveness. He shook his head hard. You love this moral high ground stuff. No, I said. I love not being used. He stood up so fast the silverware rattled. So that's it? That's it. He stared at me like he still expected a last-minute softening. There wasn't one. On his way out, he muttered, unbelievable. I said, to you, maybe. After that, the family narrative started to split. Mom still tried to make him the victim, but the facts were too plain now. Even she couldn't fully ignore signed documents and payment records once Kayla had seen them too. Dad stopped lecturing me and started sounding tired whenever Derek's name came up. Then something happened I didn't expect. My Aunt Teresa, who had watched the confrontation in silence, called me. I assumed she wanted to scold me. Instead, she said, for what it's worth, your brother's been doing this for years and we all let him. That wasn't an apology, but in my family it was close. Work got better almost immediately. That part sounds unrelated, but it wasn't. You don't realize how much mental space a family system takes up until you stop funding it. I slept better. I stopped checking my phone with dread. I took on a new client I'd been hesitant to accept because I finally had the energy. I started going to the gym again, instead of spending Sunday evenings at my parents' house getting quietly insulted over roast chicken and guilt. Friends I'd been too busy to see noticed the difference. One of them looked at me over drinks and said, you seem lighter. I was. Lighter isn't the same as happy, though. The aftermath wasn't some revenge movie montage where everything turned golden overnight. It was quieter. There was grief in it. Grief for the version of family I kept pretending I had. Grief for the years I spent earning love from people who mostly wanted access. But there was peace, too. Real peace. Not the fake peace of swallowing disrespect to keep dinner calm. The kind that comes when your no finally means no. As for Derek, his world kept shrinking. Kayla postponed the wedding. Then, from what I heard, she ended it. The apartment situation forced choices he didn't like. The car became a problem he couldn't posture his way out of. And because image was always his real oxygen, losing the audience hit him harder than losing the stuff. He stopped posting motivational clips, stopped posting provider captions, stopped posting almost at all. My mother made one last big attempt around the holidays. She invited me over early before everyone else got there. When I walked in, she hugged me too long and said, "Can't we just start fresh?" I looked at her and asked, "Fresh for who?" She didn't answer, because that was always the issue. Starting fresh usually meant starting over with no accountability. Reset the board, forget the pattern. Put me back in my old role. I didn't do it. I stayed for an hour. I was polite. Then I left when Derek arrived. No scene, no announcement. Just a boundary with a code on. And in the months after that, the strangest thing happened. Without me as backup funding, the family had to deal with Derek directly. Not the edited version he fed them, the actual version. The missed deadlines, the promises, the deflection, the entitlement. He wasn't nearly as lovable when the bill landed in their lap. That was maybe the most honest consequence of all. I didn't destroy his life. I stopped buffering it from reality. Reality did the rest. A year later, I can say this without anger. My brother didn't want support. He wanted the appearance of independence without the cost of earning it. And my family helped him maintain that illusion because illusions are easier than accountability, especially when one child is willing to carry what the others don't want to confront. That was me for too long. I used to think being the responsible one meant saying yes more often, being patient, being understanding, being the bigger person. Now I think that phrase gets abused more than almost any other in families like mine. The bigger person usually means absorb the damage quietly so nobody else feels uncomfortable. I'm not doing that anymore. I still remember that video. Real men provide for their family. The wild thing is, he was right in one way. Real adults do provide. They provide honesty, stability, respect. They don't build an image out of someone else's credit and then mock the person carrying them. And they definitely don't confuse an apology with a reactivation code. Derek did eventually admit he was jealous. He did ask for forgiveness. But the moment he followed it with, "Okay, now give me everything back," he told the truth more clearly than any confession ever could. He wasn't sorry he used me. He was sorry access ended. That distinction changed my life. These days, my life is quieter. Better clients, better sleep, less chaos. I spend holidays where I'm respected, not managed. I answer calls because I want to, not because I'm bracing for another emergency with my wallet attached. And the biggest change is internal. I don't feel guilty when I protect myself now. That used to be impossible for me. Now it feels normal, healthy even. If there's a moral here, it's simple. Helping someone is not the same thing as owing them forever. Love without boundaries turns into permission. And family that only works when you're overgiving isn't peace. It's a contract you never agreed to. I agreed to way too many of those. Not anymore. I'm Will. I'm still a lawyer, still the oldest son, still the one who keeps records. The difference now is that I also keep my distance. And if anyone in my family wants to talk about what happened, I can say it in one sentence. I didn't ruin my brother's life. I just stopped providing the parts he was pretending were his.